Hi, and welcome to Digital Citizenship in a World of AI. My name is Emma Pass, and in this video, we will talk about how to try to prevent cheating with AI in your classroom with students. And then we'll also talk about some safeguarding concerns when it comes to AI, including bias, privacy, and misinformation. Starting with this idea of plagiarism. And this is a concept that comes up a lot with teachers, and they say, how do I prevent plagiarism with AI with my students? But I want to be careful with our terminology here, because the term plagiarism means that you're taking other people's ideas or work and you're not properly citing them for it. But the companies that create this technology insist that if you are using it to create content, you are the owner of that content. You are the creator of the content. They are simply providing a tool to help you create it. So when we say plagiarism, at this point in time, I'm not sure that term is completely correct. However, I think we can all agree that if you haven't expressly allowed your students to use AI on a piece of work, and they do use AI to complete that piece of work, it would be considered cheating. So how do we prevent students from cheating with AI? The first thing to note is that writing and original creation are still really valuable skills. So we want to be able to prevent students from just using AI on their assignments and work. There are lots of tools on the market that claim to be able to detect plagiarism with AI, to be able to detect AI work, but these are not reliable enough at the moment, at the time. The one I have on the screen here is actually OpenAI's version of a plagiarism detector for its own tool, ChatGPT. It put it on the market and then it took it down less than a month later because it wasn't reliable enough. So at this point in time, do not rely on anything that claims to be a plagiarism detector for AI. The best way to currently make sure your students' work is authentic and their own is have them do it in class. Make sure it's monitored. You can even go so far as to have them do it on pen and paper, although I think having them do it in class is probably enough. Focus more on discussion-based assessments, right? Hearing your students articulate their own thoughts. And be really clear, explicitly clear about when they can and cannot use AI as a tool. The other thing I'll just say as a teacher myself is making sure you get a sample of students writing at the beginning of the year, have them write your handwritten letter or do a pre-assessment monitored in class. Then you can compare everything else to that writing sample and get a good idea of whether or not it's their own work. The next tip is to learn alongside your students. Teaching digital citizenship is the perfect way for you yourself to learn about AI. You don't have to be an expert to begin because these conversations are real time happening in our society. So, even the leading experts in AI don't know the answers to some of these questions. So it's important to just talk and learn and discuss with your students. And it's okay if they know more than you about some of this stuff. Let them help guide the discussions. Let them help be experts in your classroom. These 3 warnings are the warnings that ChatGPT gave when you first logged on. I think they look slightly different now, but they talk about bias and misinformation. They talk about how the content might be reviewed by AI trainers and not to share any private information. So these 3 warnings are the perfect place to start when talking about digital citizenship with your students, starting with bias. Talking about bias really just means we're talking about who's being included in the conversation, who's being left out, and how are the people being described. This is an example of an AI-generated image from, I think, the Bing image creator, where I asked it to display people at work, each person representing a different job. You could use this image with your students to start this conversation about AI bias. Who's being included in this image? Who's not being included in this image? There's not a lot of diversity here in terms of gender, in terms of race, in terms of body type, in terms of ability or disability. So this is a great place to start to say, hey, AI can be really biased in terms of what it thinks something looks like. Next is privacy. Chatbots collect your data and they can share it with other people. So it's important to talk to students about what type of information is appropriate to use with a chatbot and what type of information you might want to keep private. And then misinformation. This is probably one of the biggest ones for educators, specifically in talking about how we can use it as a tool and how it can be really dangerous. One concern is that phishing, like email phishing, pretending to be other people to try to get information, is going to become a lot more sophisticated because AI will be able to write these emails and outputs. Its ability to just generate false facts is also a real concern, because if students are using it to complete assignments or to conduct research, they might not be learning correct facts. This is a AI output that generated a lot of traffic last year. Somebody asked it to talk about the first president of the United States, who was a woman, and it talked all about Hillary Clinton, which of course didn't happen. But based on the information the chatbot had, it thought that that was a plausible answer. And here's the thing about bad answers, is that if we get misinformation from the AI and then we continue to put it online, the AI will continue to learn from that data, essentially poisoning it to make it so that we continue to get more and more false information. So using that as a kind of warning, hey, we need to make sure that we're not continuing to perpetuate misinformation so that these tools can still be helpful and relevant to us. ChatGPT in particular is also really bad at citing sources because it doesn't use one single source of information when it's pulling from its data source. It's instead using tons and tons and tons of information to predict an answer, but it will give you a source if you ask it to. And it's really interesting to follow those sources because oftentimes they're not real. So just kind of highlighting, hey, where is this information actually coming from? We don't know. We can't track it down to confirm it. So prompting your students with facts to fact check is a great place to start, as well as prompting them to check their sources on ChatGPT. In review, teaching students about digital citizenship through bias, privacy, and misinformation is a great way to learn alongside them, and making sure that the, especially the summative work that you want your students to be doing is monitored and in class.